I found myself wandering through the dense forest, the canopy above casting intricate shadows on the ground. Each step crunched softly against the carpet of leaves, and the air was thick with the earthy scent of damp soil and rotting wood. It was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that settled deep into your bones, making you acutely aware of your own heartbeat. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was alone in a world that had forgotten me. As I walked, memories flooded my mind. Moments spent with my father, his laughter echoing in my ears as we hiked these very trails. He would often pause, pointing out the intricate details of nature, teaching me to appreciate the world around us. "Jake, look at the way the light filters through the trees," he would say, his eyes sparkling with joy. Those were the days I cherished, the days before the weight of loss became my constant companion. But now, that weight felt heavier than ever, pulling me down into an abyss of solitude. I wondered if this journey was merely an escape, a way to run from the pain that clung to me like a second skin. "What am I doing here?" I muttered to myself, the words barely breaking the stillness. "Am I looking for something? Or am I just trying to avoid dealing with my grief?" Suddenly, a shift in the air caught my attention. I turned, and through the trees, I saw it. A cabin, partially obscured by a thick fog that rolled in like a whispered secret. It stood there, ancient and imposing, its weathered wood and crooked roof evoking a sense of both comfort and dread. The windows were murky, like eyes that had seen too much, and the door hung slightly ajar, as if inviting me to enter yet warning me to stay away. A shiver ran down my spine. This place, it feels familiar, I thought, though I couldn't recall ever being here. The allure was undeniable. I was drawn to it, as if a magnetic force was pulling me closer. With each step, doubt crept into my mind. What if this place is just a figment of my imagination, a twisted reflection of my own sorrow? But curiosity overpowered my trepidation. I reached the door, its wood cold beneath my fingers. Taking a deep breath, I pushed it open. The door creaked ominously, echoing in the stillness, and I stepped inside. Instantly, I was enveloped by an icy darkness that seemed to seep into my very being. It felt as if the cabin was alive, breathing around me, and I had unwittingly become part of its story. I stood in the entryway, my heart racing as I scanned the room. The air was thick and still, and shadows danced along the walls, shifting with an uncanny life of their own. "What is this place?" I whispered, half expecting an answer from the silence that surrounded me. As I took a few hesitant steps forward, I noticed something peculiar about the walls. They were covered with faded photographs, each one capturing a moment frozen in time. Faces stared back at me, some familiar, others strange. My heart skipped as I spotted my father in one of the images, his smile bright against the backdrop of a different life. "Dad?" I breathed, reaching out as if I could touch him through the glass. But as I moved closer, the photograph began to warp, distorting his features into a grotesque mask of sorrow. I recoiled, my breath hitching in my throat. "What's happening?" I gasped, stumbling backward. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the shadows growing darker and more oppressive. "Jake!" A voice called out from the depths of the cabin, pulling me from my panic. I turned, and there she was, Sarah. Her presence was a beacon in the darkness, and relief washed over me. "I thought I was alone," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I didn't know where I was." "I've been looking for you," she replied, her eyes wide with concern. "You shouldn't be here alone. This place, it's not what it seems." I wanted to ask her what she meant, but before I could form the words, the atmosphere shifted again. The shadows around us pulsed, and the air grew thick with an unshakable tension. "We need to find a way out," I said, urgency creeping into my voice. "Wait," Sarah said, her gaze drifting to the walls. "Look at the photographs. They're not just memories. They're reflections of our fears and regrets." I followed her gaze, and my heart sank as I realized she was right. Each image was like a window into our past, revealing not just the joyful times but the pain we had buried. "This cabin, it's a prison for our thoughts," I murmured, trying to make sense of it all. "Exactly," she replied, stepping closer to one of the photographs. "It's like it feeds on our emotions, trapping us in our own minds." As I stood there, contemplating her words, I felt a sudden chill. The shadows shifted again, and I could almost hear whispers echoing through the room. "They're calling to us," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Jake, we have to face them," Sarah urged, her expression resolute. "If we don't confront our past, we'll never escape this place." A surge of determination coursed through me. "You're right. We can't let it control us." I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the rising tide of fear. "Let's find the next room. Maybe it holds the key to understanding what's happening here." Together, we ventured deeper into the cabin, the oppressive atmosphere pressing down on us. Each step felt like a challenge, but with Sarah by my side, I felt a flicker of hope. "We can do this," I said, trying to reassure myself as much as her. As we walked, we passed more photographs, each one a painful reminder of what we had lost. I could feel the weight of my father's absence bearing down on me, a constant ache that refused to fade. "I miss him so much," I confessed, my voice thick with emotion. "I wish I could tell him how much he meant to me." "I know," Sarah said softly. "I lost someone too. It's okay to feel that pain. We just have to remember that we're not alone in this." Her words resonated within me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt understood. "Thank you for being here," I said, glancing at her with gratitude. "I don't think I could face this alone." "We'll get through this together," she promised, her gaze steady and unwavering. "We just have to keep pushing forward." With renewed resolve, we continued our exploration, the shadows shifting around us like a living entity. But in the depths of my heart, I felt a flicker of light, a reminder that despite the darkness, there was still hope. We would face whatever lay ahead, together. In that moment, I realized that the cabin, while daunting, was also an opportunity to confront my fears, to face the past that had haunted me for so long. And as I walked alongside Sarah, I knew that this journey was just beginning. We would uncover the truth together, and perhaps, in the process, find a way to heal. As I stepped into the dimly lit room, a chill ran down my spine, and my heart raced with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The air felt heavy, almost thick, as if the very walls were holding their breath. At first, I could barely make out my surroundings, but as my eyes adjusted, I was confronted with an unsettling sight. Mirrors, countless mirrors, covering every inch of the walls. They gleamed ominously in the faint light, reflecting not just my physical form, but also something deeper, something sinister lurking within me. I took a tentative step forward, and the mirrors seemed to come alive, shifting and contorting my reflection. In one, I saw my face gaunt and aged, lines of sorrow etched deep into my skin. In another, I looked like a stranger, my eyes hollow and lost. My chest tightened as the images morphed. My father's face flickered into view momentarily, a ghost from my past that I was not ready to confront. "Jake," I whispered to myself, "what are you doing here?" The silence of the room swallowed my words, amplifying the weight of my thoughts. Desperation clawed at my insides as I realized I was trapped, not just in this room, but within the confines of my own mind. I pressed my hands against the cool surface of one mirror, hoping to find an escape. "There has to be a way out," I shouted, my voice rising in panic. But the grotesque reflections stared back at me, mocking my anguish with twisted smiles and hollow laughs. I screamed, a raw sound that echoed back at me, swallowed by the oppressive silence. The more I struggled, the more the mirrors seemed to close in, a labyrinth of my fears and insecurities. "Jake!" A voice pierced through the haze of despair, pulling me back from the brink of madness. I turned, and there she was, Sarah, her face pale but determined, emerging from behind one of the mirrors. Relief washed over me like a balm on a festering wound. "You're here," I exclaimed, rushing toward her. "I thought I was alone." "I felt you," she said softly, her eyes reflecting a shared understanding of the darkness that surrounded us. "We need to face this together." I nodded, grateful for her presence, even as the oppressive atmosphere of the room weighed heavily upon us. As we stood side by side, I couldn't shake the feeling that the mirrors were watching us, waiting for us to falter. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we can confront what these reflections are showing us," Sarah suggested, her gaze steady. "They're manifestations of our fears, right? If we face them, maybe we can find a way out." I hesitated, dread pooling in my stomach. The thought of confronting my past, my guilt, and my regrets was terrifying. But I couldn't deny the truth in Sarah's words. "Okay," I said finally, "but we have to promise each other that we'll stick together no matter what." "Deal," she replied, and I could see the resolve in her eyes. Together, we took a step toward the nearest mirror, our reflections merging into one as we prepared to face the darkness that lay ahead. As we approached, I was struck by a sudden vision, a darker, twisted version of myself staring back with a malevolent grin. "You'll never escape," it sneered, its voice dripping with disdain. "You're trapped by your own failures." "No," I shouted defiantly. "I won't let you control me." But with each word, the figure grew stronger, its laughter echoing throughout the room. "Jake, focus," Sarah urged, her hand gripping mine tightly. "Remember why we came here. We're not alone. We have each other." Her words broke through my fear, grounding me in the moment. As I looked at her, I saw not just my reflection but a shared journey, a bond forged in the fire of our pain. "You're right," I breathed, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within me. "Together, we can face this." We stepped forward, hands clasped, confronting the malevolent figure. "You don't define us," I declared, my voice gaining strength. "We're more than our pasts. We're here to heal." The figure recoiled, a look of rage and confusion crossing its face. "You think you can escape?" It hissed, but before it could strike back, I felt an unexpected surge of energy. "Let's show it who we really are," Sarah shouted, and together we pushed against the mirror, channeling our collective strength. The surface rippled like water, distorting the figure's form until it shattered into 1,000 shards, each one reflecting a piece of our journey. The pain, the loss, the love we had for each other. As the last shard fell away, the room shifted, the oppressive atmosphere lifting slightly. "We did it," I gasped, trying to catch my breath. "We faced it." Sarah smiled, a glimmer of triumph in her eyes. "This is just the beginning, Jake. We have more to face, but at least we're not alone anymore." I nodded, feeling a sense of unity wash over us. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together," I vowed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. In that moment, I realized that the journey through the darkness was not just about confronting my fears, but about embracing the light of the connections we forge along the way. As I stepped into the next room, a wave of nostalgia washed over me like the chill that lingered in the air. My heart raced as I surveyed the space, cluttered with an assortment of objects that felt achingly familiar. It was as if the room had been curated from the very fabric of my childhood, each artifact a thread in the tapestry of my family's history. On a dusty shelf, I spotted a small, ornate box that immediately drew my attention. My fingers trembled as I reached for it, recognizing it as my father's old music box. The intricate carvings on its surface were worn but still beautiful. As I opened the lid, a soft, melancholic tune began to play, filling the room with a haunting melody that felt like a whisper from the past. I closed my eyes, allowing the music to transport me back to simpler times, to evenings spent on the porch with my father, the gentle breeze mingling with the sound of his laughter. "Jake, are you okay?" Sarah's voice broke through my reverie, pulling me back to the present. I turned to her, and I could see the concern etched across her face. "Yeah, I didn't expect to find this here," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's like the cabana knows what I need to see." "Maybe it does," she said softly, glancing around the room as if it held secrets she was yet to uncover. It seems to be pulling at our memories, forcing us to confront them. As I looked around, I noticed other items scattered about. Family photos, a baseball glove that had seen better days, and even a worn-out teddy bear that I had cherished as a child. Each object felt like a portal to a moment I had long since buried, a reminder of the good times and the heartache that followed. I picked up the baseball glove, the leather still warm from the touch of countless games in the sun. I could almost hear my father's voice, calling out to me from the sidelines, cheering as I made yet another wild throw. "Your family had a lot of love, didn't they?" Sarah said, her eyes scanning the remnants of my past. "Yeah, they did," I replied, swallowing hard. "But it's complicated. It's hard to reconcile the joy with everything that happened afterward." As I continued to sift through the memories, Sarah moved to a corner of the room, where an old trunk lay partially open. She bent down to examine its contents and pulled out a delicate silver necklace, clasping it in her palm. "This belonged to my grandmother," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She was fascinated by the unknown, always searching for answers to questions that nobody else dared to ask. I stepped closer, intrigued. "You never told me that. I didn't know you had any connection to this place." "Honestly, I didn't either until now," she admitted, a hint of surprise in her tone. "I always felt drawn to the stories of my family, but I never understood why. I thought it was just a passing interest. But now," she trailed off, her voice thick with emotion, "now it feels like it was all leading us here." I finished for her, sensing the weight of her revelation. "Exactly," she replied. "It's like the cabana is revealing our pasts, intertwining them in a way that we have to confront." The atmosphere shifted as we stood in silence, surrounded by the echoes of our families. Just then, a shadow flickered in the corner of my eye, causing us both to jump. We turned quickly, our hearts racing, but there was nothing there. Only the stillness of the room, thick with unspoken words. "What was that?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know," I stammered, glancing around to make sure we were alone. It felt like something just passed by us. Her gaze met mine, and I could see the fear reflected in her eyes. "Do you think it's a part of this place?" "I think it could be," I replied, my mind racing. "The cabana seems to thrive on our emotions, our memories. It's like it's trying to tell us something." As we resumed our examination of the objects, a sense of urgency began to build within me. "We need to understand what's going on here," I said, my voice steadying. "These objects are more than just memories. They're clues. They might help us uncover the truth about the cabana and about ourselves." Sarah nodded, determination replacing her earlier fear. "Let's keep looking. There has to be more to discover. Maybe if we understand our pasts, we can find a way to break free." With renewed resolve, we continued to explore the room, piecing together fragments of our histories. Each object felt like a key, unlocking doors to emotions we had long tried to suppress. My father's music box played on, a bittersweet reminder of love and loss, as I shared stories with Sarah about my childhood, about my relationship with my parents, and the weight of my father's expectations. I never felt like I could live up to what he wanted from me. I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's like I've been running away from that my whole life." "I understand," Sarah replied, her voice softening. "I felt that pressure too. My family always had these high expectations, and I constantly worried about disappointing them. It's exhausting. What do you think our families would say if they could see us now?" I asked, a hint of a smile creeping onto my lips. "Probably a mix of pride and disappointment," she chuckled lightly, but then her expression grew serious. "But I think they'd also want us to be happy, to find our own paths." I looked at her, feeling a connection that transcended our shared fears. Maybe that's what this place is trying to teach us, to confront our pasts, to accept our mistakes, and to find a way to move forward. Just then, the air grew colder, and the shadows in the corners of the room deepened. A sense of foreboding settled over us as the atmosphere shifted once more. I could feel the weight of the cabana bearing down on us, as if it were aware of our revelations. "Jake," Sarah murmured, her voice trembling, "do you feel that?" "Yeah," I replied, my heart racing. "We need to be careful. I think the cabana is reacting to what we're uncovering." As we exchanged nervous glances, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Something ancient lurked in the corners of the room, waiting for us to uncover more of our truths. "Whatever this place is, it's powerful," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her fear. "We have to stay strong and not let it manipulate us." "Agreed," I replied, steeling myself. "We can't let it control our emotions. We have to face whatever comes next together." And with that, we turned back to the task at hand, determined to confront our pasts and unravel the mysteries that lay within the cabana. As we dug deeper into the remnants of our families, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Perhaps, just perhaps, we could find a way to break free from the shackles of our histories and emerge stronger on the other side. As shadows danced among the trees as I walked deeper into the forest, the air thick with nostalgia and loss. Each step seemed to echo the laughter of my childhood, memories of sunlit days spent with my father. I could almost hear his voice, telling stories that blended reality and fantasy. But today, that familiar warmth was replaced by an aching solitude, a reminder that he was gone. The forest was eerily silent, the kind of silence that suffocated rather than comforted. I couldn't help but wonder if this journey was simply an escape from the overwhelming pain I carried within me. As I wandered, I veered off the narrow path, drawn to a thickening mist that curled around the base of an ancient structure. There it stood, a cabin, imposing and gnarled, its windows obscured by grime, like the eyes of a long-forgotten soul. The door, slightly ajar, beckoned me forward, an invitation laced with danger. A chill ran down my spine, but I felt an inexplicable pull, a force that urged me to step inside. Pushing the door open, I was met by a rush of cold air that enveloped me, wrapping around my body like an unwelcome shroud. Darkness loomed inside, a thick blanket that obscured my vision. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, but something deep within urged me onward. I couldn't turn back now. This place was significant. I could feel it in my bones. It was as if the cabin recognized me, as if it had been waiting. As I crossed the threshold, the door swung shut behind me with a resounding thud, sealing my fate. The darkness seemed to shift and swirl around me, a living entity that whispered secrets long buried. I took a tentative step forward, and the dim light revealed a corridor that stretched out before me, its walls lined with mirrors. I stumbled into the first room, my breath catching in my throat. The mirrors reflected not just my physical form, but the essence of who I was, my fears, my insecurities, and the weight of my grief. I caught a glimpse of a version of myself that was older, wearier, eyes clouded with sorrow. For a brief moment, the image of my father flickered in the glass, a haunting reminder of everything I had lost. I felt my heart race as I turned away, desperate to escape the suffocating reality staring back at me. "Jake, are you okay?" A voice broke through the haze, pulling me from my reverie. I turned to see Sarah, her expression a mix of concern and determination. She had followed me into the cabin, and in that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "It's like these mirrors are showing me everything I've tried to bury." "Then we face it together," she said firmly, stepping closer. "Whatever this place has in store for us, we can handle it." Her presence was a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this struggle. Together, we ventured deeper into the cabin, our footsteps echoing through the hallways. Each door we opened felt like a step further into our own minds, revealing fragments of our pasts. In one room, I found a collection of objects that belonged to my family. Old photographs, a rusted baseball glove, and most painfully, an antique music box that my father used to play. The sweet, melancholic melody filled the air, wrapping around me like a memory I couldn't quite grasp. "Jake, look at this," Sarah said, holding up a delicate silver necklace adorned with intricate designs. This belonged to my grandmother. She always had an affinity for the mysterious, the unknown. Her voice trembled slightly, and I could see the emotions swirling in her eyes. This connection to the past was as heavy for her as it was for me. As we examined the objects, a fleeting shadow darted across the room, sending chills down my spine. I instinctively grabbed Sarah's arm, our eyes locking in shared uncertainty. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yeah, I did," she replied, her brow furrowed. "What is this place?" Before I could respond, the walls began to whisper, an unintelligible cacophony that surrounded us. It was as if the cabin itself was alive, feeding off our fears and regrets. I could feel the weight of my past pressing down on me, urging me to confront the demons I had long avoided. We stepped into a dark corridor, the air growing heavier with each step. The whispers transformed into distinct voices, echoing the regrets of my past, the mistakes I had made. "You should have been there, Jake," a voice hissed, cutting through the oppressive silence. I froze, recognizing the accusation for what it was. My guilt manifesting into something I couldn't ignore. "Jake, don't listen to them," Sarah urged, her voice barely audible over the din. "They're not real. They're just echoes of what we've been through." But the creature that emerged before me was anything but a figment of my imagination. It took the form of swirling smoke, a shadowy figure that screamed my failures into the void. "You abandoned him," it shrieked, the words piercing through the darkness. I felt my heart race, the pressure of guilt tightening around my chest like a vice. "No, I didn't," I shouted, shaking my head violently, refusing to acknowledge the truth behind the creature's words. I could feel the heat of shame rising within me, and I fought to look away, to escape the reality that was being shoved in my face. "Jake!" Sarah's voice broke through my fog of despair. I looked at her, desperation etched on her features. "You have to confront this. You can't let it control you." The creature morphed again, its form shifting into the familiar outline of my father. "You never moved on," it accused, the voice a chilling echo of his own. "You're still here, trapped in your own sorrow." I felt tears prick at my eyes, the weight of my emotions threatening to crush me. "I tried. I really tried," I pleaded, my voice breaking. "But every time I think I've moved on, it just pulls me back." "Look at me, Jake," Sarah said, stepping closer. "You have to face this. You can't keep running from your pain. We can do this together." Her eyes shone with determination, and I felt a flicker of hope igniting within me. "Together," I echoed, the word tasting bittersweet on my tongue. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to face the creature that had taken my father's form. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I'm so sorry for not being there, but I can't keep living in the past. I need to let you go." The shadow faltered, its form flickering as if caught in a struggle. "Let me go," it echoed, the voice softening. "You must forgive yourself first." As the words hung in the air, I felt a shift within me. I realized that the only way to break free from this cycle of guilt and sorrow was to confront my emotions head-on. I had to let go of the weight that had held me captive for far too long. "Let's do this," Sarah said, her hand finding mine. "We can face our fears and find a way out of here." Together, we stood against the dark, ready to confront whatever horrors lay ahead, not just for ourselves, but for each other. We would face our pasts and perhaps, just perhaps, emerge stronger on the other side. As shadows danced among the trees as I walked deeper into the forest, my heart heavy with memories of my father. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the rustle of leaves underfoot. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was searching for something, yet I didn't know what it was. Was it an escape from the pain of loss or something more? I sighed, the weight of solitude pressing down on me. Then, through a veil of mist, I saw it, the cabin. It loomed ahead, ancient and imposing, its windows grimy and its door slightly ajar. A chill crept up my spine, a mix of fear and curiosity. Why did it seem inviting yet threatening at the same time? I felt an inexplicable pull toward it, as if it were calling my name. As I pushed the door open, a wave of cold and darkness washed over me. The air seemed thicker, charged with a tension I couldn't understand. I stepped inside, feeling as though my life was about to change forever. The door creaked ominously behind me, and I shivered, unsure if it was from the cold or the foreboding sense that enveloped me. Once inside, I was met with a room full of mirrors. Each one reflected not just my appearance but twisted images of my fears and insecurities. I gasped as I saw myself, older and wearier, the lines of sorrow etched across my face. In one of the mirrors, I caught a glimpse of my father, a fleeting image that made my heart ache. "Jake!" I heard a voice, and I turned to see Sarah emerging from behind one of the mirrors. Relief flooded over me as I stepped closer. "I thought I was alone," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "You're not alone. We're in this together," she said, her eyes reflecting a mix of determination and fear. Together, we made a pact. Whatever awaited us in this cabin, we would face it side by side. As we moved deeper into the cabin, we entered another room filled with an array of objects from my past. There was my father's old guitar, a baseball glove I hadn't touched in years, and an antique music box that played the lullaby he used to hum to me at night. Each item brought back a flood of memories, both warm and painful. "Jake, look at this," Sarah said, holding up a delicate silver locket. "It belonged to my grandmother. She always had a fascination with the mystical." I studied the locket, realizing how much we both had in common. We were tied by our histories, by our families and the burdens they left behind. But before I could respond, a shadow darted across the room. We exchanged nervous glances, the air thick with tension. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yeah, let's keep moving," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite her wide eyes. We ventured into a dark corridor, the faint sound of whispers echoing around us. Every step felt heavy, weighed down by the palpable sorrow in the air. Suddenly, a formless creature emerged from the shadows, its presence suffocating. It roared my regrets, each accusation piercing through me like daggers. I squeezed my eyes shut, refusing to look at it. "Jake!" Sarah shouted, her voice breaking through the fog of despair. "Don't listen to it." But then, the creature morphed into the image of my father. I felt my heart drop, the accusations of not moving on striking me like a bolt of lightning. "You need to let me go," it said, its voice echoing with authority. "I can't," I cried out, my emotions threatening to drown me. I don't know how." Sarah stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You need to face this, Jake. We need to face this together." With her encouragement, I took a shaky breath and opened my eyes, steeling myself against the shadow of my past. We stumbled upon an ancient book lying on a table, its pages worn and yellowed with age. "This must be it," I murmured, scanning the words. "It's a ritual to escape the cabin, but there's a sacrifice involved." "Sacrifice?" Sarah echoed, her eyes widening. "What kind of sacrifice?" "I don't know," I admitted, dread pooling in my stomach. "But it sounds like something valuable, something we might not be willing to give up." She bit her lip, her expression torn. "What if it's something personal, something that means everything to us?" I nodded, the weight of the decision settling heavily on my chest. "We need to know more about this place before we decide anything. There has to be a way around it." "Let's keep searching," Sarah suggested, her resolve giving me strength. As we moved to another room, I felt a growing unease. The cabin seemed to breathe around us, shifting and changing with our every thought. I glanced at Sarah, her face pale yet determined. "Are you okay?" I asked, concern mingling with the tension in the air. I don't know, Jake. This place is messing with my head," she admitted, her voice shaky. "I know. It's like it knows our fears and is using them against us," I replied, swallowing hard. We entered a new room and I froze, Before me was a scene I never wanted to relive, the day of my father's funeral. I felt the pain surge within me like a tidal wave, memories flooding back. Why hadn't I been there? Why hadn't I said goodbye? Jake! Sarah's voice broke through my thoughts as she tried to pull me away from the scene. You don't have to do this. But something held me there, an invisible force dragging me closer. I watched as the scene played out, my heart racing with guilt and sorrow. Jake, please, Sarah pleaded, desperation lacing her voice. Suddenly, my father's figure appeared. He looked just as I remembered, a warm smile that twisted into a frown. Did you really let me go? He asked, his voice echoing through the room. Dad, I stammered, my heart aching. Face your emotions, Jake. You can't move forward until you do, he urged, fading away as the scene shifted back to darkness. I stumbled back, gasping for breath. I can't do this, Sarah. I can't face all of this pain. She stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears. You have to. We both do. It's the only way we can escape. I nodded, realizing the truth in her words. But deep down, I felt the looming shadows of the cabin, waiting to test our resolve. We needed to confront our pasts, our regrets, and whatever sacrifice the cabin demanded. Let's find the truth about this place, I said, determination filling my voice. We can't let it win. Together, Sarah agreed, her hand finding mine. With our resolve strengthened, we prepared to delve deeper into the mysteries of the cabin, ready to uncover the truths that lay ahead. We were no longer just individuals lost in our pain. We were allies, bound by our shared struggles, ready to face the darkness together. The air in the room felt heavy as I stepped into the next chamber of the cabin, the floor creaking beneath my feet. It was dimly lit, the flickering light casting eerie shadows on the walls. As I looked around, my heart sank. The space was a cruel replica of a moment I had tried so hard to forget. There, in the center of the room, was a wooden casket draped in flowers, the kind you see at funerals. I stepped closer, my breath quickening as the memories flooded back. Jake, are you okay? Sarah's voice broke through the haze of my thoughts. I turned to see her standing a few steps behind me, concern etched on her face. No, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I'm not okay. The scene before me twisted into vivid clarity. I was transported back to that day, the day we buried my father. I remembered the way the sky had been a dull gray, mirroring the heaviness in my heart. The faces of friends and family had blurred together, their sympathetic gazes piercing through me like daggers. I had felt so lost, so out of place, trapped in a reality I didn't want to face. Jake! Sarah stepped closer, her brow furrowed. We can leave this place. We don't have to stay. But I couldn't leave. I was rooted to the spot, as if the very ground had claimed me. No, I need to see this, I murmured, feeling an overwhelming urge to confront the pain that had haunted me for years. I hadn't been there when he needed me the most, and seeing this twisted version of my past was something I had to do. As I stared at the casket, the memory sharpened. I could almost hear the sound of the priest's voice, droning on about life and loss, while I stood there in silence, unable to process what was happening. My father, the man who had taught me how to ride a bike, who had been my rock, was gone. And I had been so wrapped up in my own grief that I hadn't truly said goodbye. Suddenly, a pull in the air made me shiver, and I was drawn closer to the casket. I felt as though I were being forced to relive that moment. Jake, please, Sarah urged, her hand reaching out to grasp my arm. I shook my head, trying to focus on the scene playing out before me. The flowers smelled faintly of decay, and I felt bile rise in my throat. I have to do this, Sarah. I need to know if I really let him go. Let him go? She repeated softly, her eyes wide with concern. But at what cost? The moment hung between us, heavy with unspoken emotions. I was aware of her presence, a grounding force, yet I felt utterly alone in my turmoil. I didn't even get to tell him I loved him. I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. I didn't get to say goodbye. You can do that now, she said gently, stepping closer. You can say what you need to say. I looked back at the casket, my heart racing. But what if he can't hear me? What if I'm just talking to myself? It doesn't matter if he can hear you, Sarah replied, her voice steady. What matters is that you say it. For yourself. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, my hands trembling. Dad, I called out, my voice shaking. It's me, Jake. The air thickened, and for a moment, I was convinced I could feel his presence. I'm so sorry, I continued, my voice breaking. I should have been there. I should have been stronger. The image around me began to shift, the flowers wilting, the casket fading in and out of focus. I didn't know how to deal with it, Dad. I didn't know how to face the pain. I felt Sarah's hand on my shoulder, a silent encouragement. You're doing great, she murmured. Every day since you left has been hard. I confessed, tears streaming down my cheeks. I've missed you so much. I keep thinking about all the things we didn't get to do, all the moments I took for granted. As I spoke, the room began to shimmer, the darkness swirling around us like a tempest. I could hear whispers, my own voice, taunting me, reminding me of my failures. You let him down, Jake, it seemed to say. You abandoned him when he needed you most. No, I shouted, the sound echoing off the walls. I didn't abandon him. I just didn't know how to cope. Jake, listen to me, Sarah urged, squeezing my shoulder. You're not alone. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself. The whispers intensified, transforming into a cacophony of voices. You're weak. You're a coward. You didn't even say goodbye. Stop it, I yelled, clenching my fists. Stop it. This isn't real. But as I looked back at the casket, I realized it was real. The pain, the guilt, it was all real. Dad, I called out, my voice cracking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. In that moment, I felt the weight of my grief pressing down on me, suffocating. I wanted to run, to escape this room of horrors, but I couldn't. I had to face it, had to confront the truth that had been gnawing at my soul for so long. Please forgive me, I whispered, my heart aching. I wish I could go back and change things. I wish I could tell you how much I love you. A sudden silence enveloped the room, the whispers fading into the background. The air felt lighter, as if the cabin itself were holding its breath. Jake, Sarah's voice broke the stillness, a beacon in the darkness. Yeah, I replied, my gaze still fixed on the casket. Let it go, she said softly. You've carried this weight for too long. It's time to set it down. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. I don't know if I can, I admitted, fear creeping into my voice. What if I forget him? What if I lose everything? You won't forget him, Sarah assured me. He'll always be a part of you, but you can't let the pain define you. You can't let it keep you from living. Her words resonated deep within me, and I felt a flicker of hope. You really think so? I know so, she replied firmly. With trembling hands, I reached for the casket, feeling the cool wood beneath my fingertips. Dad, I said, my voice unwavering now. I love you. I'm sorry for everything, for not being there, for not saying goodbye. But I need to let you go. I need to find my way back to the living. The room began to shimmer again, the casket glowing with a soft light. I felt warmth wash over me, a comforting presence enveloping my heart. Thank you for everything, I whispered, my heart swelling with emotion. I'll carry you with me always. In that moment, the casket began to dissolve, the flowers falling away like petals in the wind. The darkness that had once enveloped me lifted, replaced by a bright light that filled the room. I felt lighter, freer, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Jake, Sarah's voice called, pulling me back to reality. We did it. You faced it. I did, I said, my voice filled with awe. I actually did. As the light surrounded us, I turned to Sarah, gratitude swelling in my chest. Thank you for being here with me. I don't know what I would have done without you. She smiled, a warm light in the midst of the chaos. You're stronger than you think, Jake. You just needed to see it. As the light continued to envelop us, I realized that I was ready to move forward. The cabin, with all its darkness and pain, had been a catalyst for healing. And as we stood together, I knew that while the journey ahead would be challenging, I wouldn't have to face it alone. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest, as Sarah took a step back from me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. The weight of the revelation hung heavily between us, a palpable tension that felt like a thick fog. I reached out instinctively, wanting to comfort her, but the look in her eyes stopped me. It was a mixture of fear and sorrow, and I could sense she was struggling with something deep within. "Jake, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling. I could tell it was something she had been holding back, something that might change everything between us. "It's about my family and the cabana." My stomach dropped. I felt an unsettling knot forming as I braced myself for whatever was coming next. "What do you mean? What does your family have to do with this place?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She took a shaky breath, looking down at the ground, as if the very earth beneath us held the answers. "My grandmother, she was one of the original keepers of the cabana's secrets. She believed in the power it held, the darkness it contained. She used to tell me stories about it, how it was a place of both healing and pain." I could hardly process her words. The realization that Sarah had a family connection to this place, the very place that had become a nightmare for us, sent a chill down my spine. "Why didn't you tell me this before? You knew what we were getting into." I was angry, but beneath that anger was a deep-seated fear that I couldn't shake. "I didn't want to burden you with it," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought if we faced this together, we could find a way out. I didn't want you to see me as just another part of this darkness." The implication of her words hit me like a slap to the face. I felt betrayed, as if I had been walking into a trap without even knowing it. "So you knew more than you let on? You've been hiding this from me all along? You're just as tied to this place as I am." I felt my voice rising, echoing in the stillness of the room. "Jake, please," she pleaded, stepping closer, her hands outstretched as if to calm the storm brewing between us. "It's not like that. I thought I could help you, help us. I didn't want to bring up my family's past because I didn't want it to affect what we have. I care about you. Caring about me means being honest, Sarah." I shouted, the frustration boiling over. "You should have told me the truth. I'm standing here facing my demons, and now I find out that you might have known what we were up against all along." She flinched at my words, and I immediately felt a pang of guilt. I didn't want to hurt her. I just felt so lost, so betrayed. The shadows around us seemed to pulse with our emotions, the darkness of the cabana responding to our turmoil. "Jake, I'm scared," she admitted, her voice a whisper now, her bravado crumbling. "This place, it's messing with us, with our minds. I thought I could protect you by not revealing everything, but I see now that the truth is bigger than my fear. I should have trusted you enough to share it." As her words sank in, I felt my anger wane, replaced by a sense of understanding. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "I want to understand. I really do. But we need to be completely honest with each other if we're going to get through this. What else is there? What else do you know?" She took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. "My grandmother, she was involved in rituals, dark rituals. There were rumors that she made sacrifices to keep the cabana at bay, to contain its power. I grew up hearing the stories, the warnings. I thought they were just that, stories. What kind of sacrifices?" I pressed, dread pooling in my stomach. "Emotional sacrifices," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "My family has always had a connection to the other side. We've always felt the pull, the need to confront the darkness. My grandmother believed that by facing one's deepest fears and regrets, you could break free from the cycle of pain. But it comes at a cost." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Cost? What kind of cost?" "Sarah, this sounds insane." "I know," she said, her voice cracking again. "But it's true. She believed that confronting the past was the only way to ensure that the darkness wouldn't consume you. She lost a lot in that process. I don't want to end up like her, Jake. I don't want to lose you, too. I felt my heart twist in my chest. The thought of losing her, of succumbing to the darkness that lurked in this place, terrified me more than I could express. I don't want to lose you either, but how do we fight this? How do we escape this nightmare? Her eyes glistened with tears as she took a step closer, her resolve seeming to strengthen. We fight together, Jake. We confront our fears together. We have to face what this place has shown us, what it's trying to take from us. It's not just about you or me. It's about us, about breaking the cycle. I nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling over me. I could feel the shadows of the cabana closing in, but there was a flicker of hope igniting within me. You're right. We can't let it win. We have to lean on each other. And we have to do it soon, Sarah urged, glancing around nervously. The longer we stay here, the more power it gains over us. We need to make a plan. We need to find out what it wants from us and confront it head-on. I felt a surge of determination. Okay, let's do that. We can't let the past control us. We'll face whatever this place throws at us, together. As we stood there, united in our resolve, the atmosphere around us shifted subtly. The darkness seemed to pulse, but now it felt less oppressive, as if it were hesitating in the face of our determination. I reached out, taking Sarah's hand in mine, grounding myself in her presence. Whatever happens, I won't let go, I promised, squeezing her hand tightly. We'll find a way to break free from this. I won't let my past define me, and I won't let this place tear us apart. She looked up at me, her eyes shining with a mixture of fear and hope. We have to believe that we can make it out of here, together. As we stood there, hand in hand, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The shadows around us might be thick and foreboding, but I knew that with Sarah by my side, we could face whatever the cabana had in store. We would confront our pasts, our fears, and ultimately, we would find a way to break free. Together, the air in the cabin was thick with tension, a palpable weight pressing down on my chest as Sarah and I stood in the dimly lit room, the shadows seemingly alive around us. The flickering candlelight danced on the walls, distorting our reflections in the cracked mirror that hung crookedly above a dusty table. My heart raced, and I could feel the anxiety gnawing at my insides. We had come so far, delving into the depths of our fears, but now we were faced with the ultimate choice, one I wasn't sure I was ready to make. Jake, we can't keep running from this, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. She was standing a few feet away from me, her gaze fixed on the ancient book that lay open on the table. The pages were yellowed with age, filled with cryptic symbols and faded ink. I could see her trembling slightly, and I knew she was just as scared as I was. The ritual, it's our only chance. I nodded slowly, my mind racing. The weight of her words hung in the air like a storm cloud, ready to burst. But what if we sacrifice too much? I replied, my voice shaky. What if we lose everything? Sarah turned to me, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. What do you think we've been losing all along? Every moment we've spent in this cabin has taken something from us. We can't let it take any more. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat making it difficult to speak. I could feel the ghosts of my past swirling around us, whispering doubts and fears that threatened to overwhelm me. The memory of my father's face, the pain of his loss, surged to the forefront of my mind. I don't want to face him again, I confessed, my voice barely a whisper. Neither do I, Jake, she said, stepping closer. But we have to. If we don't confront our pain, we'll never be free. I can't keep living in the shadow of my family's secrets, and you can't keep running from your father's memory. Her words struck a chord deep within me. I had spent so long avoiding the truth, hiding from the guilt that gnawed at my soul. The thought of facing my father, even in a memory, filled me with dread. But as I looked into Sarah's eyes, I saw a flicker of determination, a spark that ignited something within me. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. Let's do it. Let's perform the ritual. But we need to be clear on what we're sacrificing. Sarah nodded, her expression resolute. We need to let go of our pain, our regrets. It's not about losing something physical. It's about releasing the emotional burdens we've carried for too long. I looked back at the book, the words swirling on the page like a dark cloud. What if we can't? I asked, uncertainty creeping back into my voice. What if the cabana doesn't let us go? It's not the cabin that holds us captive, Jake, Sarah replied, her voice steady. It's our own fears. We have to confront them head-on, or we'll be trapped here forever. I took a deep breath, the air around us thick with anticipation. Okay, let's begin. As we gathered the items for the ritual, I felt a sense of urgency wash over me. We found the necessary components scattered around the room. A piece of string, a small stone, and a feather that seemed to float down from nowhere. Each item felt significant, imbued with the weight of our shared experiences. Are you ready? Sarah asked, her eyes locking onto mine. I could see the determination etched on her face, but there was also a flicker of fear that mirrored my own. I think so, I replied, my voice steadying. But we need to promise each other that no matter what happens, we'll face it together. Always, she said, a small smile breaking through the tension. Together, we positioned ourselves in front of the table, our hearts pounding in sync as we recited the incantation from the book. The words felt foreign on my tongue, but as I spoke, I could feel the energy in the room shift. The shadows around us began to pulse, as if responding to our invocation. Let go of the past. Let the burdens fade. We seek freedom from the pain we've made. I chanted, my voice gaining strength with each line. Sarah joined in, her voice harmonizing with mine, and together, we created a powerful cadence that echoed off the walls. As we recited the final lines, I felt a rush of energy surge through me, electrifying every nerve ending. The room began to tremble, and I could sense the cabin reacting to our plea. The flickering candlelight turned into a blinding flame, illuminating the darkness that had enveloped us. Jake, Sarah shouted, panic creeping into her voice. Hold on to me. I reached out, grasping her hand tightly as the room swirled around us. The shadows twisted and writhed, forming shapes that beckoned us to succumb to our fears. I could see visions of my father, his disappointed gaze piercing through the chaos. My heart raced as I fought against the tide of regret that threatened to pull me under. Focus, Jake. Sarah's voice cut through the noise, grounding me in the moment. Remember why we're doing this. I closed my eyes, summoning the strength to confront the pain that had haunted me for so long. I could see my father's face, the way he smiled, the warmth of his embrace. But then the memories morphed, twisting into the guilt I had buried deep within. The regret of not being there, of not saying goodbye. No, I shouted, forcing the memories back. I won't let you control me anymore. Let it go, Jake, Sarah urged, her grip on my hand tightening. You can do this. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I focused on the love I had for my father, the good memories we shared. I could feel the darkness receding, the shadows fading as I released my grip on the guilt that had bound me. I forgive you, Dad, I whispered, the words spilling from my lips like a long overdue confession. I forgive myself. The room erupted in a blinding light, the shadows dispersing as if they were made of smoke. I could feel the energy of the ritual surging around us, lifting the weight of our fears. As the brilliance enveloped us, I caught a glimpse of Sarah, her expression fierce and unyielding. Together, Jake, she urged, her voice fierce. We're almost there. With a final surge of determination, we completed the ritual, our voices rising in unison. We are free. We release our burdens. We embrace the light. In that moment, the cabin trembled violently, as if the very foundation was being shaken by the power of our combined strength. I could feel the warmth of the light enveloping us, washing away the remnants of our fears and regrets. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the whirlwind of energy dissipated, leaving us standing in a serene stillness. The candlelight flickered gently, casting soft shadows on the walls. I opened my eyes, my heart racing as I took in the transformed room. Did we do it? I gasped, my breath hitching in my throat. Sarah looked around, her expression shifting from fear to awe. I think we did. A wave of relief washed over me, but as I glanced around the room, I realized we weren't entirely alone. The shadows still lingered, but they felt different now. Less menacing, more like echoes of the past we had confronted. I could sense a lightness in the air, a shift that signaled we had taken a monumental step forward. We still have to be careful, I reminded her, my voice steadying. The cabin isn't done with us yet. I know, she replied, her eyes scanning the room. But we have each other, and we've faced the worst of it. I nodded, feeling a newfound strength surge within me. Together, I echoed, the words a promise that resonated in the depths of my being. As we took a moment to breathe, I felt a flicker of hope igniting in my heart. The shadows may linger, but we had reclaimed our power. We were no longer prisoners of our past. We had taken the first step toward healing, and I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them side by side. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding as Sarah and I stood in the dim light of the cabana's central room, the walls pulsating with a life of their own. Shadows danced menacingly, and the very structure seemed to breathe, as if it was alive and aware of the turmoil within us. I could feel the weight of our shared pain pressing down on me, a palpable force that threatened to crush any flicker of hope I clung to. "Are you ready for this?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the heavy silence like a knife. I turned to her, searching her eyes for any sign of fear or doubt, but found only a fierce determination that mirrored my own. "I don't know if I'll ever be ready," I replied, swallowing hard. The knot in my stomach twisted with each passing moment, but deep down, I knew we had to move forward. But we have to try. We can't let this place keep us any longer. Together, we gathered around the makeshift altar we had created from the remnants of the objects we had found in the cabana. A rusted knife, a broken mirror, and a small, ancient box that seemed to hum with energy. They were reminders of our pasts, our regrets, and our fears, and now they would serve as the key to our escape. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus on the task at hand. "What do we do first?" I asked, glancing at the tattered book that lay open before us, filled with cryptic symbols and faded ink. It felt almost like a relic from another world, one that held secrets I was desperate to uncover. "According to this," Sarah said, pointing to a passage, "we need to speak our truths. It says we have to confront our fears and let go of the things that bind us to this place." "Speak our truths," I echoed, feeling a shiver run down my spine. The thought of laying my soul bare was terrifying. What if it's too much? "We have to do it," she insisted, her voice steady. "It's the only way." I nodded, knowing she was right. The cabana had fed on our fears and doubts for too long, and now it was time to turn that energy against it. I took a step closer to the altar, feeling the heat of Sarah's presence behind me, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone. "Okay," I said, trying to steady my voice. "I'll go first." As I opened my mouth, the memories flooded in, unbidden but necessary. I've spent so much time feeling guilty for my father's death. I began, my voice trembling. I should have been there for him. I should have said goodbye. The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. I kept thinking that if I had just made different choices, he would still be here. I let my regrets consume me, and it's like I'm still living in that moment, paralyzed by what I could have done. A flicker of light danced across the walls, and I could feel the cabana responding to my confession, as if it were acknowledging my pain. I pressed on, needing to release the weight I had carried for so long. I've allowed that guilt to define me, to keep me from moving forward. I'm terrified that if I let it go, I'll forget him. As I spoke, I felt a surge of emotion, a mix of sorrow and relief, washing over me. The atmosphere shifted, and I knew I was breaking through some barrier I had built around my heart. "Jake," Sarah said softly, stepping closer. "You're not forgetting him. You're honoring him by living your life fully. You have to believe that. Her words grounded me, and I nodded, feeling a sense of clarity emerging from the depths of my despair. You're right, I said, my voice steadier now. I need to forgive myself. I need to let go of this burden. Sarah stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. It's your turn now, I encouraged her, sensing that she was holding back. You don't have to do this alone. Taking a deep breath, Sarah glanced down at the floor, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. I've been hiding from my own truth for a long time, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I thought I was just a bystander in this story, but I'm not. My family is tied to this place, and I've been running away from that fact. What do you mean? I asked, my heart racing as I listened intently. My grandmother was one of the first guardians of the cabana's secrets, she confessed, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She was involved in rituals and dark practices to keep the past at bay. I thought I could escape that legacy, but it's part of me. I've spent so long trying to hide it, trying to pretend it doesn't exist. But it does, and I can't keep ignoring it. I felt my heart ache for her. You're not your past, Sarah. You can choose to break free from it, I said, reaching out and placing my hand on her shoulder. You have the power to define your own path. She looked up at me, her expression a mixture of fear and hope. What if I can't? What if it's too late? It's never too late, I assured her, my voice firm. You're stronger than you think. You've already faced so much. Just like me, you have to confront those fears and let them go. Taking another deep breath, she nodded, gathering her strength. I've been afraid of what my family represents, of the darkness that surrounds it. I thought if I didn't acknowledge it, it wouldn't affect me, but it has. I feel like I'm carrying their weight, and it's suffocating. As she spoke, the cabana trembled slightly, as if responding to her confession. The shadows flickered, and I could feel the energy shifting, the oppressive atmosphere becoming lighter, if only just. I'm ready to let it go, Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. I want to break free from this cycle, from the fear that has kept me tethered to my family's past. I could see the determination in her eyes, the resolve to confront the darkness that had loomed over her family for generations. You can do this, Sarah, I said, my heart swelling with pride for her bravery. We can do this together. With newfound courage, Sarah took a step forward, her voice rising above the shadows. I release the fear that binds me, the guilt that weighs me down. I will no longer let my family's past dictate my future. As she spoke those words, a brilliant light erupted within the cabana, illuminating the room and pushing back the shadows that had held us captive. The air crackled with energy, and I could feel the weight of the oppressive darkness beginning to lift. Keep going, I urged, my heart racing as I felt the power of our shared truths fueling the light. We have to finish this together. I am not afraid of the darkness anymore, she declared, her voice strong. I choose to stand in the light of my own truth. The intensity of the light grew, and I could feel it wrapping around us like a warm embrace, pushing away the shadows that had tormented us for so long. Yes, yes, I shouted, feeling a surge of hope surge through me. We're stronger than our fears. As we stood together, united in our resolve, I realized that the cabana had been a manifestation of our pain, our regrets, and our fears. But now, as we confronted our truths, it was losing its grip on us. The walls trembled, the air vibrated with energy, and for the first time, I felt a glimmer of freedom. We're almost there, Jake, Sarah shouted, her eyes shining with determination. Let's finish this, I replied, my heart pounding with excitement. With one final push, we recited the last words of the ritual together, our voices intertwined, resonating with the power of our shared experiences. The room erupted in light, blinding and brilliant. As the cabana shook around us, the shadows retreating in the face of our combined strength. In that moment, I knew we were on the brink of something monumental, a breakthrough that could change everything. Together, we were ready to confront whatever lay ahead. ready to reclaim our lives from the darkness that had held us captive for far too long. The air crackled with energy as Sarah and I stood together in the heart of the cabana, the walls pulsating with darkness. I could feel the weight of everything we had faced pressing down on us, and yet there was a flicker of hope deep within. "Jake," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling, "are you ready for this?" I looked into her eyes, searching for reassurance. We had come so far, faced so many of our fears, and now we stood on the precipice of something monumental. "I am," I replied, though my heart raced with uncertainty. "We have to do this. We can't let the past control us anymore." As we took our positions, I felt the trembling of the cabana intensify, as if it were alive, aware of the storm brewing within us. The shadows danced around us, whispering our regrets, our sorrows. They clawed at the edges of my consciousness, trying to pull me back into despair. But I held onto Sarah's hand tightly, grounding myself in her presence. "Let's do it together," she said, her voice steadying me. "We'll face this together." "Together," I echoed. We began to recite the words from the ancient book we had found, our voices harmonizing in the dim light. The incantation filled the air with an otherworldly resonance, and I could feel the energy swirling around us, responding to our intentions. "By the weight of our burdens, we seek release," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. I could feel the darkness pressing in, but I pushed through. "By the truth of our hearts, we claim our freedom." As we spoke, a blinding light erupted from the center of the room, illuminating the shadows that had tormented us. I squinted against the brightness, feeling warmth wash over me. The cabana trembled violently, as if it were being torn apart. "Jake!" Sarah shouted over the roar of the energy. "Keep going." I took a deep breath, focusing on the feelings I had buried for so long. The guilt, the grief, the fear. I release my guilt. I let go of the pain of my father's death. I cried, the words bursting forth from my heart. The shadows recoiled, hissing in protest. The light intensified, wrapping around us like a cocoon, and I could feel the grip of my past beginning to loosen. "I accept that I can't change what happened. I will not let it define me." "Jake, you're doing it," Sarah encouraged, her voice slicing through the chaos. "I'm right here with you. I release the weight of my regrets," I continued, feeling a surge of power as I spoke. "I choose to remember the love, not just the loss." Suddenly, the cabana erupted with a cacophony of sound, the walls shaking as if they were being torn apart by an unseen force. The darkness closed in, trying to swallow us whole. But I held onto Sarah's hand, feeling her strength radiate through me. "Together, Jake!" she shouted, her voice fierce and unwavering. "Together," I replied, my voice steadier than before. "I release my fear of moving forward." The words poured out of me, each one shedding a layer of the burden I had carried for so long. "I release the fear of forgetting my father," I cried, tears streaming down my face. "He lives in my heart, and I will carry him with me always." With every proclamation, the darkness around us began to shift, swirling in chaotic patterns before exploding outward in a burst of light. I could feel the weight of the cabana pressing down on us, but it was no longer suffocating. Instead, it felt as though it were being transformed, reshaped by our determination. "Keep going, Jake," Sarah urged, her grip tightening around my hand. "You're almost there." I released the fear of being alone, I shouted, the words echoing in the vastness of the cabana. "I will embrace the connections I have, the love I've known." And then, in that moment of catharsis, I felt the shadows begin to dissipate, unraveling like smoke in the wind. The light enveloping us grew brighter, until it was almost blinding. "Jake, look!" Sarah pointed, and I turned my head, squinting against the brilliance. In the center of the room, I saw a figure materializing from the light, and as it came into focus, my heart skipped a beat. There, standing before me, was my father. He looked just as he had the last time I saw him, warm, smiling, and filled with love. "Dad?" I whispered, my voice catching in my throat. Jake, he said gently, his voice like a balm soothing my soul. You've done well, my son. You've faced your fears, and you've begun to heal. The overwhelming wave of emotion crashed over me, and I felt the dam within me break. I ran forward, collapsing into his embrace. I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have been there for you. I should have... Sure, my boy, he interrupted softly, holding me tightly. You have nothing to apologize for. Life is filled with moments we cannot control. What matters is how you choose to move forward. I pulled back, looking into his eyes, filled with warmth and understanding. But I've been so lost without you. I didn't know how to let go. You let go by embracing the memories, by remembering the love we shared, he replied, his gaze unwavering. You are stronger than you know, Jake. You must allow yourself to be happy. As he spoke, the light around us shimmered, and I felt Sarah's presence beside me, her hand still clasped in mine. I glanced at her, and she smiled, her eyes filled with tears. Jake, she said softly, you're not alone anymore. You have me. I turned back to my father, feeling the warmth of his love surrounding us both. I'm ready to let go of the pain, Dad. I want to live, to honor your memory by embracing life. He nodded, pride shining in his eyes. Then go, my son. Live fully, love deeply, and remember that I am always with you. With those words, the light enveloped us completely, washing over me like a warm tide. I felt the cabana dissolving around us, the darkness retreating as the light expanded, filling every corner of the space. Suddenly, I was standing in a familiar place, the backyard of my childhood home. The sun was shining brightly, the grass lush and green, and there was a gentle breeze in the air. I looked around, bewildered, and then I saw him again, my father, standing by the old oak tree, a warm smile on his face. Dad, I called, running toward him. Is this real? It's as real as you need it to be, he replied, laughter in his eyes. You've done it, Jake. You've found your way back. I stopped short, taking in the scene before me. But what about the cabana? What about Sarah? Sarah is right beside you, and the cabana was a part of your journey, he said, gesturing behind me. I turned to see Sarah standing there, her expression a mix of wonder and joy. Jake, she said, her voice soft and melodic. I can't believe we made it. It's beautiful here. I nodded, still trying to process everything. Was it all in my mind? The cabana, the darkness, was it just a manifestation of my grief? Yes, my father said gently. You created it as a way to confront your pain. You needed to face it to truly heal. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I can finally let go, I murmured, glancing at Sarah, who beamed at me. We can move forward together, she said, stepping closer to my side. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I'd felt in years. Thank you, Dad, I said, my voice steady, for everything. Remember, Jake, he said, his smile unwavering. You carry my love with you always. Never forget that. As I looked into his eyes, I realized that I didn't have to carry the weight of my grief alone anymore. I had Sarah by my side, and I had the love of my father guiding me forward. Let's go, Jake, Sarah said, taking my hand. We have a life to live. I nodded, feeling the sun's warmth on my face as we walked forward together, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The past would always be a part of me, but now it was a part of my journey, not my destination. And as the memories of the cabana faded into the light, I knew that I had finally begun to heal.